I just was going to hand him his rifle, and then right before I took my third step, everything just went white. Just like, I kind of tell people it's like if you shut your eyes and stare into the sun, it was just like this hot glow. And I just felt like I was flipping through the air like hundreds of times. And immediately I didn't have a thought or can think anything, but it felt like I was dying. You know, that's what it felt like, because it just felt like I was floating and there was this high pitch ringing in my ear. And I just knew, I was like, that was the easiest thing. Like, dying is super easy. That wasn't too bad. You know, that was the first thing that I could think of. And then the flipping started to stop. It just still. And I started to gain like real thoughts, and I can start hearing voices. And then I realized that I was alive. But now I realized I know what IEDs do to people, and I just lost both of my legs, both of my arms. Like, I was just torso flipping through the air.
So first off, I just want to thank you, Alfred, for coming all this way, man. Appreciate it
very much. Yes.
So, Alfred, you came into the Marine Corps. Let's start there. Why the Marines?
I didn't have any aspiration to do the Marines. Incidentally, and I haven't mentioned this too much, but I ran into this recruiter when I was 14, 15. I was with my younger brother in Walmart walking around, and he's doing his typical recruiter walk through a Walmart or something, you know, and I see him in his uniform, and he hands me a card. He's like, hey, do the Marine Corps. I think I threw it away. You know, I just was like, whatever. Now, incidentally, it's time for college. So as I'm going through high school, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to study. So I went to the recruiter's office. You know, it was kind of an idea like, well, let me entertain it. You know, maybe it's something I can maybe do. They'll pay for school. I can go travel, get some life experience before I just dump money and waste 4 years in college. So I go to the recruiter's office. It happens to be the exact same recruiter. He's still on station there. So it's the same guy. And he's like, hey, and I was like, do you remember me? And he's like, you've seen a million guys. He's like, I don't remember you. He's like, but you want to sign up, you know? And he was the only guy working that day. I mean, it was a joint recruiter office, so they had everybody, but he was the only one there. And he's, you know, sat me down. He put the colorful blocks on the table and said, you know, what do you want to do?
The crayons, red and green.
No, they didn't have any appetizers. There was no food. It was.
Sorry, I had to.
Yes, yeah. No, it was like here's a block. It says travel. Put it where you want to do. Like,
okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever entice people with that. Yeah.
We had a booklet that was actually my time frame. It was money, education, service. And I can't remember, something else.
Yeah. So there's like these things that you would be enticed to do. Yeah. So it was like that. And they would be like, hey, what's important to you? And I'm like, oh, I want to travel. I want to get free college, all these things. So he's like, great, you can do it. Sign up. So I signed up for the DEP program, senior in high school, went through that. Of course, all my buddies, nobody believed me I was going in the Marine Corps. Like, I was kind of I was pushed to limits, you know, broke rules if I could, just because I like to, you know, jump outside the box and do things differently. So they was like, this is not true. So I graduated in June, gave myself a little bit of a summer, left in August to go to the Marine Corps. So I had no aspiration to do the Marine Corps. Obviously, my mom was a little upset. You know, she's missing her firstborn's leaving. My dad was pumped. He was happy because he always wanted to do the Marine Corps, but he couldn't, or he wanted to do any service, but he couldn't because he had an injury to his eye in high school. So I wound up doing it, and it kind of shocked everybody. But that's how I wound up in the Marine Corps.
So did you check any of the other services, or was it just like... Really?
I did not. Well, they weren't there. They didn't work.
Oh.
Yeah. So if they were there, I might have shopped around, but he scoots me right up. He's like, oh, you look like a Marine. Let's go. You know, and these guys were motivated. They were like, oh, you can do it. You know, you look good in this uniform, you know? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. You know, and, you know, they sell the whole thing. You know what I mean? He's like,
oh, yeah.
He's like, you got a girlfriend? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you say goodbye to her. You know, it's like.
Not only does every one of us have a story about when we came in and what the experience was with the recruiter, but having been a recruiter as well, I can see both sides of it. And, you know, like for me, it was my dad was Navy. He said the one thing you shouldn't, was a divorced parent. So he's like, the one branch I don't want you to join is the Marine Corps. So, of course, I walk into the recruiting station and go to the Marine Corps. And actually, I'm thinking that's the direction I'm going to go. And my mother had said, go check out all the services. So I ended up shopping around.
That's smart. Yeah.
The Army ended up grabbing me because they took my brochures from the Marine Corps and threw them in the trash and said, this is where you need to go. And did like a hard sell convincing and the whole bit. And I ended up going that route. Otherwise, I'd have been in the Marine as well.
Wow.
not that I now look at it. I mean, we all have our stories and what we end up wanting to do, but on the recruiting side of it, it was always so interesting because we actually were, especially Army and Marine Corps, we were after the same applicants in most of the cases. I mean, we were scouring the ASVABs. I thought you were going to say, oh, I ended up waiting until high school. I took the ASVAB. Next thing I know, I got a phone call. That's typically the journey of most people.
Right. So they would do a good job on the ASVAB or something, and then they call.
Oh, man,
like,
every
hey,
branch.
we got you. Yeah.
Every branch.
What were they giving ASVABs to kids? Or?
Yeah. So it was one of the deals we had with high schools, and that the government would say, we'll, if we give you the ASVAB, it's free, and it's also a great aptitude for you guys to be able to see how well they're doing in math and science and language.
Interesting.
So because of that,
scheme. That's awesome. That's amazing.
well, because of that too, it had a fine little print on it that said, because you as a school authorize us to give you the ASVAB for free, it allows us to make phone calls to your students and get access to your students. So,
Excellent.
so parents would get upset and everything. It's like, your son or daughter did take the ASVAB, right? Well, that gives us the authority to be able to pick up the phone and call them.
They had interest, you know? He scored very well. He got a 33, you know. But,
Cold calling and recruiting suck.
oh, I'm sure.
I feel for the, it sounds like the recruiter did a great job.
It was great. And he did do it, like, he made sure I got the designator because, funny story about recruiting, I guess you have to put that designator for that MOS or whatever it may be for your service on your contract.
Yes.
Or they can do open
Anything.
contract. Or, yeah, for instance, like I decided to do military police because I figured if I'm going to do this at all, I still don't know what I want to do and what I'm good at, but everybody loved cop shows. Like I always loved like cop stuff. I wanted to be a cop. So I'm like, not only that, but I can transfer this skill when I get out very easily, or at least I thought you could. And it just made sense. So I looked to see military police. He sold it really well. He's like, you scored high enough, you can do it. So he gave me 5811, which is the Marine Corps is military policeman. Now you get to like combat
MEPS.
training. Yeah.
Well, but first you go to MEPS, and then the
yeah.
guidance counselor. What do they do? And in the Army, it's a little bit different. Like, you get that type of opportunity when you get to the MEPS and you get to the guidance counselor after you've taken your physical, you've already taken the test and everything. The guy has all the results, or gal has all the results sitting in front of them. And then they offer you, military occupational specialties that are hot right now is what they're really trying to sell, because that's what the Army's pushing. And then if you say, no, I really want to be military police, they look to see if they can't make that kind of work. And then they give you kind of a guarantee. They give you a guaranteed contract for that if you meet the particulars. Marine Corps is different because there's still an opportunity, even all the way through boot camp, where you may not go, right? Or is it once you get this guaranteed thing, you're good?
Yes. Yeah, well, from what I understand, if they put the designator, like they write in your contract, you're 58, whatever, and they put the extra numbers, but if they just put 5,800, you can fall into anything within law enforcement, which at that point is really only two things. So that's how it would, like same thing for like infantry guys. If you're an 0300, you can get anything within the infantry, but if you're 0311, then you're a grunt. If you're, and I don't know the other ones, but if you're at 0314 or something, you're something else.
Right.
So if you put that designator,
whatever.
Yes, yeah. So if you put the designator, you're good.
Right.
Now, I didn't really know this or experience it until we get through boot camp. They send you to Marine Corps combat training. And then once you graduate the 30 days of Marine Corps combat training over in Lejeune, it's like this big group, and everyone's sitting there. We're all done, and they're reading the orders. They're like, okay, Gonzalez, you're going this way. Brenner, you're going this way. And then you're like, Smith, you're going to corrections school because the recruiter didn't put it. And he goes, I'm supposed to be a cop. And then he's like, no, you're going to be a corrections officer.
So that's how it ends up. Okay.
Yeah. So sometimes they want to know, and then it's unfortunate, but that's how they'll get set over there. Because I don't know who's signing up to be corrections. I mean, that's brutal, But yeah, so I feel horrible for these kids. So I was lucky. I was sent to military police school. So it's a long process. You go through boot camp, which is the longest of the services. Then you go to combat training, and then you go to military police school, which for us was at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. So if you're an Army guy and you know anything about Fort Lost in the Woods,
yes.
Yep, worst place ever. So
a lot of people don't realize that we share schools between different branches and stuff. Predominantly, Marine Corps ends up going to a Navy school. They have their own schools for some things, usually combat-related, combat arms. And then they have Army schools they end up going to, like, maybe they might end up going to Signal, Intel, military police, those types of things.
Like they have the Seaburn school up there, like the gas.
And because you were from the East Coast, because you were from Jersey at that time?
Yes, yeah.
You ended up going to
the real boot camp. Yes,
the real boot camp, not Hollywood.
And we're gonna get a lot
LA.
of crap for that. That's it. Yeah, no, not Hollywood.
You said that.
I didn't say anything. We can edit it. No, but yeah. So I went to the real boot camp in Parris Island, where all the bugs are. For instance, let me disclose something. I went to Camp Pendleton. Let's fast forward. San Diego boot camp is horrible because they are in downtown San Diego. Like
right by the airport.
Have you flown into San Diego?
Yeah.
You fly right over it. You can see them doing PT.
Yeah.
So every day they see like a ticket home. Like that is horrible.
Hearing the aircraft, smelling the jet fuel.
Yeah, smelling the sushi, like the ocean all day. Like we had swamp water, like fleas. Like we felt like we were in like Vietnam. Yeah, it was horrible. But at least we were in a different environment where we didn't think about home or we didn't like watch a plane leave. So I give those guys a lot of credit because that stinks, you know?
Yeah. But they are in San Diego, California.
Yes.
And so I mean, it's a little bit different. I think I've said this on really long time ago in other episodes. I believe, and somebody please correct me because I want to know if this is true. I think it was during the days of Vietnam. If you went to Parris Island, they gave you the luxury of driving in where there was a sign that says you better give your soul to Jesus because your ass is ours.
Really? That's crazy.
I don't know if that's true.
I don't remember seeing it. I mean, it's probably true.
Well, it was Vietnam. So it was a little bit different era in terms of military as well. But I've always been curious about that.
Me too. I don't know. Someone will have to look that up. And
did you feel like you needed to give your soul to Jesus?
I was always big in my faith too. Like we'll touch on that a little bit. So I did. I mean, I wish I knew what that meant. You know, nowadays it's much different. But yeah, that's true. A lot of guys really. I have fast forwarding too. I met a lady. We did service dog training. Anyway, her comment and like her phrase for everything was, "This dog needs to have a come to Jesus moment." You know, it's where like your soul opens up and it's like you really learn who's the master. So a lot of these kids in boot camp had that come to Jesus moment. You know, they're standing there and they're goofing off. Next thing you know, they're getting screamed at by 4 guys with the frog voice. It's like, "Get out of your base, get out of your base." And the kids are screaming. The best boot camp story I have is we had one kid lose it and he wanted to, he just lost it. And he's like, wanted to fight one of their drill. He's like, "You want to fight me?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Go ask permission to kick, the drill instructor's ass." So the kid went down and he went up to the senior drill instructor and he's like, "Sir, can I have your permission to go kick it?" And then they went on him. And then he was kicked out immediately. Like there was no going back.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me a story like they got into the ring with gloves.
No. There's stories that we can't talk about, but and then boot camp's changed a lot over the years. You know, like the Mothers of America thing and all
absolutely.
that. I thought it was weird they couldn't curse, and then like you hear them say a curse word and you're like, wow, they're really mad. Like they have these weird phrases and stuff. But
then they're worried about getting penalized.
Trouble. Yeah, they can get in trouble. It's nuts. Yeah.
So Canine.
Yes.
How did Canine end up coming into this? Because you went to military police. When did you find out about the Canine opportunity?
Yeah, so you're in military police school. And of course, I still don't know anything about anything, but they have multiple jobs. Like you have like NCIS or CID, like these different like investigator jobs. You have canine, which is like a cop with a dog. So they would kind of brief you on all these different things, and one of them was the option to go canine. And they said it's a volunteer program only. We need, at some point in this class, we're going to ask you to do an interview process. You have to write an essay and basically promote yourself to say, "Hey, I want to do this," because it has to be volunteer. We don't take people, you can't force someone to work with a dog. It's a thing that you have to, and we learned this down the road. It's a very unselfish job. Like you have to treat the dog better than your own self. And it takes a certain individual. And then they look for high PT scores. They try to get like the top tier of the class. In my situation, I think there was like 6 that they were taking. So they said, "Hey, we're going to do the selection." And then when he's talking about this, I'm like, I don't want to do this. This sounds horrible.
Really?
Like I shot it down immediately because I didn't like dogs. I had.
Oh, you didn't? You're a cat person? Or?
Oh my God. Like, no, it's to this day. But no. I didn't have them growing up. My dad was just like, "Dog, yeah, 3 houses down, go pet a dog." Like he grew up with one. It was always outside, it wasn't like a pet. Like, even a long time ago, people didn't have dogs the way we do now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in strollers. We treat them like kids.
You're right about that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You've drove around Atlanta here. There's some areas here that are definitely like that.
Are there? Yeah, I didn't want to drive around Atlanta anywhere. I don't know. I've heard stories, so
you're safe.
Yeah, I went on the highway and I said, "This is where we're going," But yeah, so I didn't have dogs, and then my first I saw them at people's houses. They jump on you and they're hairy, they bark, and it scared me. And then I have like this funny story. I don't tell anybody. My wife's like the one who knows. I was like 12. My neighbor went away. They're like, "Can you watch our dog?" It was this little black Pomeranian thing. And I had to go take it on a walk. And
they're the worst.
It was like, oh, they are the
yapping.
worst.
I'm sorry, those who love Pomeranians. But
yes. I have a feeling you're gonna get in a lot of trouble for this episode.
Really,
there's gonna be things they said.
Crayons.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You're gonna have a million comments like Missouri's awesome and I love cats. You know, it's gonna be horrible. I had this Pomeranian and I'm like, I have to walk it, and then I clicked it up. It walked outside and it walked me around the neighborhood and it took off, and I just kept following it. I didn't know what I'm doing. So I started crying, and I'm like 12 years old, and I'm like literally crying. I'm like, I don't know what to do. And it's like, it won't go back home. It won't go back home. And I finally got it into the house, and then like my parents don't know or care. They're like, well, what's wrong with you? You know? And so I told this story to my wife like down the road, and we're just laughing about it because like now I know, you know, you're supposed to tell the dog where to go. You're not supposed to just go. So I didn't have experience with dogs growing up. You know, I met this but now my wife, but there was this girl that I met at my first job ever. It was Six Flags Great Adventure. And it's a bunch of girls there. I had no intention of having a girlfriend. I'm going to the Marine Corps. You know, I'm not talking to anyone for 13 weeks. I have a new life I'm going to live. Didn't want one. And I see her, you know, she just pops up out of nowhere and she's glowing. And, you know, I'm just like, damn it. You know, I got to talk to her. So we started talking, and I immediately fell in love. And I'm not trying to be cheesy or making this up. I immediately fell in love. And then I go to her house, and she's got 3 dogs, like a bird, a cat. Like, she's got animals everywhere. And I hated it. Every time we went home from a little date, they're barking, and so I didn't like them.
So wait.
Now you're like, how the heck did you get canine?
Why did you volunteer for?
So Staff Sergeant Aaron is like, well, who wants to be canine? You got to be an awesome individual. You got to do top 2.
So as he said awesome, you thought that's me.
So I'm thinking, because I remember I brought it up a little bit. I don't know if it was on or not, but in high school, they were like, can you jump 10 feet? I'll be like, I can jump 12 feet. Or like, hey, you got to write 500 words. I'm like, I'm going to write 501. Like, I'm just always going to break the barriers. I just want to push myself, challenge myself. Same thing with why I did the Marine Corps. So when they said canine, I was like, okay, now it's getting a little interesting. And then he's like, and then you'll get air conditioning overseas. Because of the dog. Sold. And I was like, sign me up. So I wrote the essay first sentence of the essay. Never had a dog in my life. Staff sergeant's like, what the heck are you applying for this for? You know, and then I just told him I just want to challenge, want to do this. So I was selected to go to canine school, and went back there, and it was 100 times worse than taking my wife home from a date. Like,
so where do you go to canine school at?
San Antonio, Texas, which if anybody know, if all the guys listening know, Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri is much different than San Antonio, Texas. And we were there from January. I was there from December until April in Fort Leonard Wood.
Pretty cold.
And it was covered in ice. So like we couldn't even do like the fancy driving a cop car, spin around in circles, because there was like ice everywhere. Like it was very, very cold. So in April, we get orders to go to San Antonio. And now we're getting down there like we walked into Oz or something. Like we were like, what are we doing here? This is beautiful. The sun's on our face. We're on the river walk. It was like a magical place.
Until June, July hits.
Yeah, yes. And then it got really, really hot. Yeah. So we were very spoiled. But yeah, that was a very interesting process. So I got canine. They sent us down there. It was a group of 6 or 7 of us, and it might have been 8. And then we did canine school. And it's a whole other ballgame because you're now in an Air Force base. So we got to talk when we got to the Army base. Like, don't get sloppy. You know, don't be like them, you know, and then that was a big rivalry. It was a huge rivalry.
Yeah, they always is.
Oh, and then so there was bad, but then we get to the Air Force base and it got even worse. They're like, don't get sloppy. You know, there's all these different services. Some of the instructors were like different, you know, it was a joint service school. So it's actually the DOD program that the dog program is run by the Air Force. So that's why it's down in San Antonio. It's our big dog hub.
Okay, so when you get there, how does it work? Because I think a lot of people who are interested in canine are, you know, whether or not they're looking at, you know, being an instructor later or whatever. How do you end up picking the dog, or does a dog pick you? And how does that whole cycle work? Like, do you go through first obedience training with a standard animal, but it's not going to be your animal, and then you move into that? So explain a little bit about the cycle, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You get down into dog school, you wait for your class picks up, and then it usually probably, like me, it was 2 Marines, like 2 Army guys, 2 Navy guys, your class, and then you walk through the kennels, you know, your heartbeat's pumping and stuff, and you're like, this is what you're going to handle, but not yet. They give you.
What'd you primarily see? Which ones?
Mostly shepherds, Malinois. Okay. Like they have hundreds and hundreds of dogs there, so they tour you around and stuff. And like I said, just this thunderous roar coming from these concrete kennels. It was a scary, scary sight. And meanwhile, I don't like dogs, so I'm like really scared. But luckily, they don't give you a dog right away. So what they do is, everyone knows what an ammo can is. Yeah, they attach a leash and a choke chain to it, and you stand there. It's funny watching the guys. They'll sit there, and you have to stand there and do commands. Sit. And you have to yank on the box, and yeah, it's really funny. So they make you do this ammo can for a while so you know the commands, because it'd be crazy to just give a random person a dog. So that's how it starts. And you're on, I don't know the timeline, I always forget, but it's a couple of days where you're doing cans, and then you pretend like you're working a dog, and then they finally assign you one. So they try to match it up based off of size, how the dog works. But you start doing the basic obedience. You do like the going through the hoops, the obedience course, you're going on the ramps and stuff, and then you do your patrol work, which is the bite sleeve and all the biting.
Do they already know obedience training, or are you providing that at that point?
No, because we don't know anything. They have dogs that are in this program that are either like washed out of the Fleet Marine Corps, they're like in a process where maybe they didn't have like one qualification to make it, so they're there, so they're good enough to be in school to teach us. There's a lot of variety of why they're there, but these dogs are already trained. So they already know basic things. So as soon as we hook them up and say sit, the dog knows it. We're just learning how to handle the dog. It's basic handler's course.
Right.
And then you do your first section, which is patrol and obedience, and then it goes to another section, which is the odor side. So you're doing all the scent work, scent detection. And that's when you get a different dog, because they would use this dog who's primarily used for scent detection. So you handle 2 dogs before you even get to wherever you're stationed. And then you get assigned your actual dog that you're paired up with.
Now, there's different types of dogs, I guess, for different things as well, right? Because there's maybe bombs, maybe, sniffing out bad guys, maybe. So different types of scents or whatever. So how do they assign you to a specific dog and a specific mission for that dog?
Again, it's all like volunteer stuff. So everyone does basic patrol handlers course. So they'll be down there for several weeks to months, and then once you graduate there, then they created another program, because with the war on terror, things were getting very serious with the IEDs. So they actually started this program called Specialized Search Dogs, and their job was to do everything the dogs already taught, but from a distance. So they would do off-leash stuff, so up to hundreds of meters off, hand signals. It even got to the point where they're using radios to communicate with the dog. So the Specialized Search Program, so you can be in school for almost a year and a half and never get to the Fleet Marine Corps, because then you would go do that. It's all volunteer. So you can be like, okay, I want to do that. Now, me personally, I didn't opt to do that because I was itching to get to the Marine Corps, and kind of wanted the experience of like having a cop car, having the dog in the car, getting that whole thing. And so I went out. A lot of my buddies stayed back for this SSD program, and then I moved on from that. But to answer your question, there's multiple different types. We have tracker dogs, where, like you said, they would go and just basically track, where you go to an area, get the scent, and then find the bad guy. Mm-hmm. And then you have your dual purpose dogs, which are trained to find explosives and attack. Then the SSD dogs, they're primarily just off leash. They don't attack usually. And then down the road, they created the MPC program, which is the big bread and butter now, which is the multi-purpose canine program. Those are the ones that like the special forces handle.
Well, that makes total sense.
Yes, yeah, because they're doing everything. They're doing tracking, right work, everything.
You don't want to be switching dogs or bringing dogs forward.
Exactly, because back in the day, that's what it was. When the global war kicked off, we would have cops be trained as cops, but then they would do their basic stuff, but then they would have to go overseas, and now they're working with infantry units, they're working with the Army infantry units, they're getting attached to the Navy SEALs and sometimes ODA, so it was that whole jump back and forth. So this whole big push, as the war kept ramping up, they went from that to let's just create one unit that only trains and deploys, that's their primary job, mixed with guys that know the terrain, know the education. And then it got even more serious, where they're like, hey, we just have to make them, special programs. Because unfortunately, as the war started to die down, these programs just went away. So it's actually part of history now, because it doesn't exist anymore. Because obviously the war's gone. Everyone knows what happened in Afghanistan, unfortunately. And, there's no need for it. But the NPC program is still alive and strong. And we got dogs all over the world.
Wow. I guess I didn't really make sense, but I didn't realize it had gone like all away.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, we still have dogs on base, so like you have canine. The canine program exists, right? But this whole idea, this thing that I was a part of, this Marine Expeditionary Force, where they're like, hey, we're just going to send you here. And that's why when I was at canine school and I got my orders and I was going to Camp Pendleton, they're like, you're not going to Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton. You're going to Marine Expeditionary Force. And nobody knew what that was at the time. I was the only one showing up in my unit, and they're like, you're just going to their train and deploy. So that was it. So I never even saw the inside of a cop car.
So how was it then? So what was your first duty assignment out of there? Where?
Camp Pendleton, California.
And after Camp Pendleton, that's where you got deployed with 1st Marines at that point?
Yeah, well, I was deployed a year or two later, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't right away.
So for the first 2 years, what were you doing?
So for the first 2 years, initially, it was standing this unit up, and it wasn't my responsibility. I mean, we had first sergeants coming in.
But you're part of the OG then.
I was the very first one. I showed up, and nobody knew what they were going to do. They sent me to the kennels. They're like, you're not supposed to be here. So they sent me to some barracks. I was living with some other guys, and as other people started trickling in, we got a sergeant. There was only like 8 or 9 of us, and it was all we did. I mean, they were filling our days with stuff. We were at the pool. We did combat, like the Marine martial arts training. Like we went all the way up to our green belt. We felt super cool. You know, we're kicking each other's butts and stuff. But we were just filling our day with whatever until the dogs started coming in and they can stand this unit up. So it was a very interesting process because it didn't exist. And it's something that exploded to all the different bases. We had 3 MEFs and I was a part of the 1 in California. So yeah, it was a learning experience. And then every once in a while we get to go to kennels and we're getting in bite suits and helping them out as much as we could. But the first several months we didn't do anything really until the dogs started coming in and we had people coming by. So it was interesting.
What was it like when you got the orders to go overseas? And
yeah, well, that was another interesting story because if everyone kind of knows the history, you know, like Iraq was hot most of the time between like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then after 8, it started to slow down. So now we're getting ramped up for a deployment. They were going to send 30-something dogs to Iraq. So we had this whole thing planned. We're doing training. We're going to Iraq. And it was and I'm going to get this correct, but it was in 2009 where they said, you're not going to Iraq anymore. You're going to Afghanistan. They pulled us in on a Tuesday. My wife already had her plane ticket Friday. We were moved out of our apartment and they said, hey, everybody, guess what? In 6 months, we're going to Afghanistan. So cancel all your plans, go find a place to live. And we're going to get ramped up for Afghanistan. So
lovely.
It was weird. Yeah. They sent 4 guys over there instead of the 30. And then everyone started going. We sent the first group of guys to, it was December of 2009. And they were the first group. There was a small group. And then we replaced them in 2010 in June.
And so tell me about what that was like. What kind of unit was it that you were attached to? Because wasn't it a recon unit that you were?
I was not with recon. I was the infantry unit I was with was a sniper platoon.
Okay, so that's what I was thinking then.
Yeah, we had guys with recon. They were all over. So that's like the crazy part about canine is like when we go over there, you know, we spent hours together training and we go there with the largest number of dogs since Vietnam on one plane. And then we have to stand up the kennels. We're building it ourselves. And then we have to all say goodbye to each other. So every other day someone leaves and they're like, hey, you're going to go work with this group. And you have to go and sell yourself. You have to introduce yourself to new people. And, you know, a lot of these other units, you know, like especially the teams guys, they're working together all the time. You trust the guy behind you.
Yeah.
You know, so it was kind of tough for us to go out there and say, hey, look, you know, this is who I am. This is my limitations and capabilities. This is what the dog can provide. And we had to make new friends everywhere we went. So it was a bittersweet thing for us because we had to say goodbye to our own guys and then go work with other groups. But it was nice because then you got to meet other people, meet other services, work with other countries. And it's a very like humbling thing to be a part of that. It's cool.
When you think about snipers, though, you think about guys that are typically at points at which they may stay for long periods of time, not moving, you know, trying to really, you know, survey the area to give feedback.
That's what I thought. I'm like, I'm going to a sniper platoon?
Right. So I was thinking the same thing as like, you know, the canine aspect of this. Help me out.
It made sense. It made sense when we thought about it, like more, because they didn't have a dog in the area whatsoever. So it wasn't just like with them. They'd go out on patrols, do show of force and stuff. So it was me being out there clearing the areas. Like if they were going to go gather intelligence in like some group, and that's really what we did. We just went from like little villages to villages, interviewing people, searching their houses. And I had grief in there, searching their houses. And there was one guy that happened to have a cache of stuff on his lawn. Unfortunately, I didn't have the credit to take it. He just gave it up. He's like, yeah, it's buried over there. And then I had to watch the guy. So like part of our job is they were like, hey, make sure he doesn't run. So I'm like itching. I'm like, I hope to God this guy runs. Like, this is my only chance. Like, and he runs. And then now I'm thinking like, oh, now I hope he doesn't run because like, this is going to be a problem, you know, because I heard stories when a dog gets a blood bite, it changes the dog completely. Like we had stories of dogs in Iraq, they're biting people all the time and they get the taste of that blood and it changes them. So yeah, I had one instance where it almost happened and I was all amped up. We were like, hey, there's a guy running out the back building, go get him. And I was amping grief up and my heart's racing. And then when you get in that point, you're like, if this actually happens, it's, you know, he's going to tear this guy apart. But that's what we do too. It's just like kind of like protecting people, making sure they don't take off. So yeah, with the sniper platoon, it was interesting because like I was just searching areas that they would go into. And then we never really, there was one time where I did something called an LPOP where we had to go to a spot, hang out all night, and they were basically watching the area to see if anybody was doing anything fishy. So I would go in and search the area that they were going to go in first, and then they can safely be there.
So getting back, you mentioned your dog's name, but we didn't get into when you picked him up and how long you guys were together before you deployed.
Yes. Yeah. So he came in with the first group of dogs. There was 3 that came off the plane, and it was this dog, Troy, Vicky, and Grief. And the first couple of guys, it was always like first come, first serve. We were there. So like, all right, let's try to match these up with these first 3 Marines that came in. And my buddy got Troy, which sucked because he was an amazing dog and everybody wanted this cool looking Mal, and he was an awesome, easy dog to use. And then there was this dog, Vicky. He was this tiny little shepherd who, in my opinion, sucked. She was a great dog, but super annoying, like 40 pounds, real yappy. And I had her. So I'm like standing there. I felt so embarrassed. I'm just like, oh, this dog like kind of stinks, like whatever. And my buddy's walking this big black shepherd. He's got these awesome eyes, big pointy ears, and he's just this awesome stoic looking dog. And he was struggling a little bit. So I'm like, dude, can we just switch really quick? And then after a couple hours, I was able to handle him a bit more, but this other dog, Grief, sucked. So it was like hard to do it, but it just made more sense size-wise because he was a smaller Marine, smaller dog. I was bigger with a bigger dog. And that's how I wound up with Grief. And from that point on, it was just every day playing and training with them. And it took forever for us to love each other, because again, like going back to my history, I didn't like dogs. I didn't know them. I didn't understand it, and I didn't understand that, like, if I was nervous, the dog would be nervous, and if he was doing something weird, he wasn't doing it because he didn't listen or he only spoke German, he just didn't trust me, and that's what we do as handlers is try to break those barriers of trust and be able to like save lives in the end.
But the fact that you're picking him up basically right off the plane and trying to build that relationship before going and deploying forward, that's tough as hell.
It is, yeah. And it's like something, that's why it's very important. When the staff sergeant's like, go pull your dog, it doesn't mean go do one training thing and then put him back. It means go pull him, put him back, groom him, walk him, do some play, do some extra training. Like, it's a constant 24-hour thing. And then you don't know this as a younger Marine. You're not really taught, you're taught the basics, but over time you start to pick this up. And I would see guys coming off deployment with their dogs and they're walking perfectly next to them, right next to them, and they look like best buds. They're staring at each other in the eyes, and meanwhile, I'm beating the heck out of Grief in the head, like, let go of the toy, and I'm like, I don't get it. And it's like, it's a thing that clicks. It's an understanding, this mutual bond that you learn over time.
Yeah, I can totally see that, but I can also see the fact that, when you're going down range and you're feeling that sense of combat and that anything can go and get, eclectic or whatever, you want everybody to be able to do their job. Mm-hmm. And in your case, you're struggling because you've got an animal in which you've got to build a strong relationship rather quickly, knowing that they're expecting you to do your job when the time comes. That's a tough dynamic. And not to mention you're trying to break in and become at least one of the team members where they respect what you do. It's got to be tough. Definitely.
Yeah, it is. And so they make sure you're ready. They push you to the limits. The leaders that we had were great because they would make you do things before you go overseas to like teach you like, hey, this is going to happen. And they teach you how to sell yourself and all that. And you have to basically trust the dog, so it's like we have to not only trust our dog, but we have to tell other people you have to trust me and my dog. So it's a tough thing, but that's what makes canine fun. It really taught us to be these like high-end professionals that went out and like did work. So it was interesting.
When you started getting out there, I could imagine over time, things start getting more natural. You start getting into a groove, but then I think that can also be a bad thing for you as well.
Yes, like when you're overseas.
Yeah,
yeah,
complacency.
Yeah,
over and over.
Yeah, it did because like it's the first time out, and I'm sure everyone listening can attest to this. The first time you go out of the wire and you're in a different country in combat, every step you take or every moment, that high adrenaline, you're just waiting to get shot at, or you think you're going to step on an IED, or the person you're talking to is strapped with a suicide bomb. I was that way for the first several weeks. The first time was nuts because you're like, I'm gonna die. And then your dog's jumping through canals and like doing all this stuff, and you're like, gotta get it together. Then you get it together. Then you do a week of missions, and then you gotta go, I gotta go back and talk to these people again, or like, oh, I gotta walk down the same street that doesn't have IEDs. And then you get complacent, and then that's when the bad things happen because you start to let your guard down. And it definitely goes through stages, and I talk about it a little bit, but then you get to this point where something will happen and it just snaps you right back into it, and then you're extra alert, and you just kind of flash back to like, okay, this is no kidding. You
had some of those events happen.
A few, yeah. And luckily for me, it was like a pop shot. I had stories of dudes who like got off, they were getting, the first time I talk about it, but my buddy comes off the helo. It's his first mission ever, and he's getting shot at like crazy. And he like, they told him to get down, it's like the whole big thing. And for hours he was in this firefight. So I can't even imagine what that was like. I remember walking back on patrol, and then we heard like, dit. And then everyone's like, what was that? And then we turn around and it was just some jerk, shooting at us for no reason. But like your heart rate goes up, and then it's that reminder, like, okay, this is no kidding. You're here for a reason. So you got to stay vigilant about it.
Yeah. You had a couple buddies that, you ended up hearing about later on and stuff. So what happened to some of the friends that you ended up getting called back to the rear for you didn't know what the reason was or anything else. And then you end up finding out that, there was obviously, this is just part of the life of being there.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was funny. We were just talking about it that, we get to this point of complacency. I was there for about 2 months, and you get to this point where you're comfortable. Like, I was happy I finally got these guys to love me. I was with the sniper group. They were having good times, good missions. They loved grief at this point. And then I get this phone call like, hey, you're leaving in like an hour. You got to go back to Leatherneck. And initially I was just like, oh, that sucks. Like, I'm comfortable. I'm here. Things are easy. This is great. But I knew that we were always supposed to go back, and we were told that, like, hey, you're going to come back to the bigger base. Camp Leatherneck was the big base over there that everybody worked out of, and that's where our main kennels was built. So we knew we had to go back for retraining. So I went over we were bouncing from fob to fob until I got back to the big one. And as I'm in the one fob, I see one of my buddies in the chow hall line. I go up and I smack him on the head with the tray, and I'm just asking him, like, hey man, how you been? And he's like, hey, I'm doing pretty good. I was just like, hey, did you hear about Max? And I was like, no, Max. Like, I didn't hear about anybody named Max. Like. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, we didn't have any dogs named Max, because like in the military, you sometimes use your last names. I'm like, this is weird. And I've started like really freaking out. Then you think nobody's starting to talk about, no one ever says, hey, did you hear? Like, even if someone found 40 IEDs or someone saved someone from a burning building, you're not gonna like, did you hear about this? So anytime you hear, did you hear? It's usually a bad thing. And he told me that there was my buddy out there looking for bombs, and he found one. They found another one, and then right before the third one went off, he got hit, and my buddy was severely injured, and they got him out of there. They brought him to Germany, and unfortunately he lost his life August 7th, and that was the first real loss in Afghanistan for the handler community, and it killed me. I mean, it ate me up a little bit. It was the first time that I really realized, like, this is no kidding, this is a real deal. You hear about it sometimes in the news, or like you're experiencing it sometimes, but when it's happening to your own family, your own brothers who are over there, it really cuts deep. And then I just started going through these stages of grief as far as like dealing with it. I'm still over here. You got to lock it away. You got to put it in the back of your mind and still go out there the next day and fight. But I knew at that point, that was probably why I was getting pushed back to Camp Leatherneck.
Yeah. So did you end up going back to the same fob that you were on in the same unit?
I didn't. No. We got back there. I met everybody. They brought back as many as they could. Obviously, for mission priority, they couldn't bring everybody back. We had a beautiful ceremony for Max. Then after that, our staff sergeant was really great. He was like, hey, take as much time as you need, relax, whatever, deal with your grief. And
were you doing his voice?
He's from Alabama.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Roll time.
I was wondering why your voice changed there all.
Roll time.
Okay.
And so he said, hey, take as much time as you need. Do whatever you got to do. I don't want to force you to go back out there if you don't want to. Every single one of us want to go back out there and do what Max said. Basically, I want to say started, but we didn't want to get out of the fight. We were kind of like his death lit a fire in us that like wanted us to go back out there and fight. So everybody volunteered to go back out. They said, hey, guess what? You're not going back to work with the group you were with. We need you somewhere else, because it's all about where they need the dogs. It has nothing to do with where you want to go. And, I left my PSP over there and whatever other garbage that I had in the tent. And I just had everything I had was grief, so we were good to go. But I, left all that at PB Owens with the snipers.
Because you were thinking you were actually going to go back.
That's usually how it works. Yeah, you're with the group. Like a lot of guys, they worked with recon.
Yeah, they just kind of like said, "Hey, man, Alpha, we need you. You got to go to Camp Leather, and I can't tell you." Just kind of, so you just grabbed your stuff and go and thinking, "Okay, I'm going to come."
Right, because I thought I was coming back, and then so most of that stuff is, I think it's still there, or somebody has it. Someone adopted it, So, but yeah, it's gone, and they just send you wherever they need you. And I did a couple missions out of Leatherneck, which is great because I worked with my buddies, and then from that point on, they were like, "Hey, you're going to this group called Jump Platoon," and I'm like, "I am not jumping out of an airplane." You know what I mean? Like, that's horrible. And they're like, "Oh no, it's not as crazy as you think. You just have to like walk around a battalion commander." So I was like in this little area where there was like a town hall, and it was more of a city like thing. Like, where before I was in the desert with nothing but huts and stray dogs, and now it was more like city wise. And again, we run into this like issue where people are like, "Oh, can't your dog work off leash?" And I'm like, no, there's kids running around everywhere. There's people everywhere. My dog's trained to attack. Some other dogs are able to do that, but my dog's gonna bite a kid if he comes around the corner real quick. So you have to, again, just sell yourself, set your limitations, prove what you can do. And it was a good group. I was only with them for about 2 weeks until they were like, hey, you're coming back again. And they said, you're coming back to Leatherneck. And here I'm thinking somebody else died, but thank God it wasn't. It was actually getting pulled back for a bigger mission that was going on behind closed doors. So
yeah, what was that?
So the rumor was that the Army needed a lot of help in the Kandahar province. So like the Marines.
It was pretty eclectic there.
Yes. So the Marines really worked in Helmand, and that's where most of them stayed. And now the Army didn't have as many dogs as we did over there, and Kandahar apparently was bad. So they said, we need to send as many over there as possible. But it's a lot more difficult when you're doing joint service stuff, sending them from one province to the next. It had to get approved from like the Pentagon level. So we were kind of waiting around and seeing what was going to happen. And then in the meantime, they said, hey, guess what? We're available. We're sitting around. Let's go do a mission with the Brits. So they sent a bunch of us over there to work with the Brits guys. And they did a
SBS or SAS guys? Or
no, it wasn't anything crazy special. We already had a couple guys inserted with 444, which I think is their like special guys. Okay. And they were just the infantry unit, like whatever. I don't know what they were called or what their unit was, but they were just like straight infantry guys. They had a bunch of mine detectors. They actually had 2 dogs. The girl had like a Cavalier or something. It was crazy. So yeah, it was a cute little dog. But they needed help too. So they were doing these elections, and we had to search the polling sites and go out there. And that was different too, because you're working with different services, and it was an amazing experience to be able to work with those guys. So it was fun.
What ended up happening after that?
So then after that, we get back from the Brits thing, and they were like, hey, we're going to get ready to go to Kandahar. And then they said, all of you are going to Kandahar, all 30 of you. So they sent all of us to work with the Army, again, get to a new fob.
So they pulled those guys off of their units that they were with.
Yeah. So you're talking about
all the 30 guys. So
most
everybody
of them came off. There was a few. We had a couple with MARSOC. They stayed. And there's a couple that just stayed in their positions, but almost all of them came out of the Marine groups, and they went working with the Army. Wow. It was that serious. Yeah. And we didn't really understand the gravity of it until we got there. Like, it was just kind of cool, an opportunity to work with them. But when we got there, it was bad. There was a lot more action there than, there was action everywhere. Afghanistan 2010 was horrible. But yeah, they needed the dog help a lot. So we were happy to get over there.
So what ended up happening, leading up to that? I think you lost one buddy, and then you end up finding out you had a second friend, one of the 30s, that ends up getting killed as well.
Yes.
Then you end up getting back to Camp Leatherneck for that ceremony and stuff. But then I think you had a time period which, if I'm not mistaken, is this right around the 24 October time period?
Yeah, because I was with the Army. That's when it was all happening. So we were with the Army from September into October.
Okay.
The end of September, rolling into October, and I was with them for about 30-something days, like 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, in October.
So you got back, you got a chance to talk to your wife and have a phone call with her and tell her, hey, yeah, I'm doing okay.
Yep. Yeah, it was a typical day. I woke up early and went to the phone center, and they give you the 20 minutes that you get. And, I called her and said, hey, I'm just going to go out for a week or so, 2 weeks, and I won't be able to talk for a while, and just give her the heads up. And then, after that, it'll be over. It's almost like towards the end of the mission, like as far as our deployment goes. And then from there, we'll be coming home. So it was kind of like hopeful, we're getting towards the end. And then they sent us out there. We drove out to the site. It was a huge operation. It was like a week or two long. They're supposed to be clearing out in this entire area to build like this massive highway. And it was all part of this big thing. Apparently it's on Wikipedia or something. It's called Operation Dragon Strike, where there's this big operation for multiple different facets were involved to clearing out this part of Kandahar to make it whatever it became. And we were with an Army tanker unit or whatever they were, and like engineers. And then we had a lot of Afghans, with us. The Afghan National Army was with us. And then, of course, the grunt guys I was with. It was like a striker unit out of Germany. So they had like their striker tank vehicles too. Yeah. So it was a good group of guys. And they, we had me and another buddy was a SSD dog. So he would handle most of the off-leash stuff. I would do all the close quarters, like the buildings and everything. So it was a bad day. We get out there, and they, immediately on the radio, they're like, we found an IED. And it wasn't us, but it was somebody else. So we're like, all right, we'll wait. They did the explosion. I got a nice little video of it. They did a controlled det. We move on. They say, hey, we found another one. So we're right at the end of this building, and I'm waiting on the side of the road, and we're just hanging out, waiting for them to do another controlled det. And I'm sitting here with me, Grief, and there's this kid sitting me right next to me about 4 feet away. And we're just playing, talking. He's telling me about his dog back home and how much he just misses him and loves him, and he's petting on him. Grief's crawling all over him. And then they're like, hey, we're about to do it. Everyone stand up and move like 50 feet or back. So I go to stand up. I grab my stuff. I take like 5 steps to the left, and then this explosion goes off. and there's just rocks and dirt everywhere. And I turn around and just Grief's retractable leash is just missing in this cloud of smoke. And I can just know he's gone. You know, I knew that IED was way too close. It was something different. So I'm like pulling on it. He's not moving. And I see him and he's just scared. He's locked up like this. And I'm checking him and he seems to be okay aside from being just so shook up. And then I turn around and look, and then inside this giant crater is this other kid. He's wailing his arms and legs and he's screaming and he's got blood all over his face. And I'm just thinking, like, this makes no sense. Like, IED sent things out, not in. You know, it didn't make any sense to me what I was seeing. But I knew he was okay. You know, he had arms and legs. He was wailing his arms and legs. And, you know, he was breathing because he was screaming. So I moved out. I'm posting security. I'm waiting to get ambushed. I'm just thinking it's the worst day ever. Just immediately start praying, saying, like, God, you know, help us get through this, whatever it may take. And Grief's laying right underneath me. And then I say, hey, we got to search an area for, you know, the medevac to come get this kid out. So there's a little farm field, and I went and searched it, and I'm like, let's go, buddy. Come on, let's go get it. And then sent him out, and he just waddled his head. He was completely fried from that.
TBI, yeah.
Yeah, he was shook. He couldn't hear me. I'm just trying to tap him, and he's just a zombie. So I figured the way pressure-plated IEDs work, I was like 6 feet or better than 2. So I just walked in a circle. I'm like kicking dirt. And like I said, it's probably more stupid than brave.
Yeah, because pressure plate would have gone off.
Yeah, but at least it would have hurt me and not like a helicopter with 6 guys in a gurney. That was my thought process. So I'm just doing this spiral, kicking dirt. I'm just so upset. And then I see behind me on top of the building, they're taking down the body of Stephen DuPont, the kid who was sitting right next to me. And he was sitting on top of an IED. And I got the one question that a handler never wants to get ever in his entire career, is one of the sergeants came up to me several minutes later, and he said, why didn't Grief respond to that? And I immediately looked past his head, zoned out, and ignored everything he said, because there's nothing you can say. You know, these dogs are proven not perfect. He was playing on top of this kid. You know, we were resting. Whatever the case may be, it's not going to happen. But those questions are the worst. You know, why didn't you say, you know, what could have happened differently? But we were sitting right on top of it.
Had no idea that you 3 were sitting so close to one.
Yeah, as soon as I got up, the poor kid was right there on top of it. The only thing that I say, and I know, because I think about it all the time, is like in his last seconds of his life, he was in a different place. He was literally playing with my dog. He was smiling. He was thinking of his dog back home, and he just wasn't there. You know, so if it was anything that I can take from it, it was that, you know, we just live in life. And that's all you can do when you're over there, is like never look back, because you never know when it's going to be your last step.
Yeah. Yeah. Then after that, you end up getting close to a building, I guess, with a door. The sergeant major was a little crazy. Tell us about all this whole thing, because to me, this is the wildest part of the story. When I hear about this sergeant major and stuff, totally reeks Marine.
Yes. Well, he was an Army guy. But
oh, was he?
Yeah, they were with the Army at the time.
Oh, I thought he was a Marine.
No, but any sergeant major who lived that long, he's the guy who he had his like camouflage thing. Like, you remember the gray ones?
Yeah.
What were they called again? Did they call them BDUs or were they ACUs?
No. Yeah. AC. I think it was ACUs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find out. Somebody will end up letting us.
Dan, can you look that up? What's the ACU stand for? Where was agricultural what?
No, it's the it wasn't. Was it the OCPs?
Oh, now you're just going off. I don't know what that means either. We could do acronyms all day long.
Anyway, he was
in the gray ones, so he didn't blend in. He was the only one who blended in because his were so faded and dusty. He still had like Gulf War sand. Yeah, he was covered in Desert Storm sand. And this guy was a killer. Like he was like, you trusted everything he say, right? So we're doing this building. Grief's shot, and they're like, we're gonna search this building. So in the front, there's like these big double doors, like metal doors. I've never seen anything like it. It's like this big fortress looking thing. We go around back, and there's another door, and it's like there's another metal door. And these guys are like, we're getting into this building. We're going to stay here for tonight. So I'm with the captain, the sergeant major, their medic, who's like the medic of the platoon, but like he's next to them in case something happens. Then we're with 2 other Afghani guys. So I don't know how like the most important people of the unit were like on top of each other.
Yeah, no lie.
Yeah, it shouldn't happen. But we're all there. He's like, yo, search this door or whatever. I'm like, well, can't search anything, but I'll check it. And then sergeant major's like, I'm jumping this wall. He's like, I'm getting over this wall. And in my head, I'm just like, this is not a good idea.
How high was the wall?
It's like 10 feet. It was big enough to where he needed like help up, but he was able to throw himself over. But it was like, you know, it was big. And so he handed me his rifle. He's like, hold this. And he handed me his rifle, so I'm holding it. And he literally took out his like knife. He had nothing but a knife on him. And then he starts to scale the wall, jumps over. And now in my head, I'm like, he's in an unsecured building. Like this guy, but I'm like, this guy's gonna kill people. Like, it's gonna come out great. Then I'm with the captain, and he's like, I'm just gonna get into this place. So he starts peeling like the mud back from the door, and he starts like yanking on this metal door. He's bending it, and then he starts bending it farther and farther. And then the Afghans were with, they were getting so upset, and I don't know why, but they were just like freaking out. They're like, and then we're like, what? And then he's like, apparently the translator said that they didn't want us breaking their property. So this like captain was like hell, I don't give a crap what you're saying. Like we're breaking into this building. So they kept going back and forth. They said, fine, we'll take a picture of it, I guess for the insurance claim or whatever. And then so I had a camera. I took a picture of this door. He starts peeling it back more. He's like, here, hold my rifle. He has two hands on it. He's yanking on it. He's bending it like Superman, and he throws it to the ground. And now I'm standing there with 3 rifles, a pistol, and my dog. And he's now looking and waiting. And then I take the picture of the door with it down after he killed it. And then all of a sudden you hear the sergeant major come around the corner. He's like, got in. He's all like amped up and ready. He's walking back to me. He's got a big grin on his face like he just killed 4 people. He's happy that he made it to his building. And I had a sigh of relief, and I just started walking back to him. And I just was going to hand him his rifle. And then right before I took my 3rd step, everything just went white. Just like, I kind of tell people it's like if you shut your eyes and stare into the sun, it was just like this hot glow. And I just felt like I was flipping through the air like hundreds of times. And immediately I didn't have a thought or can think anything, but it felt like I was dying. That's what it felt like, because it just felt like I was floating, and there was this high pitch ringing in my ear. And I just knew, I was like, that was the easiest thing. Like dying is super easy. That wasn't too bad. That was the first thing that I could think of. And then the flipping started to stop. It just still. And I started to gain like real thoughts, and I can start hearing voices. And then I realized that I was alive. But now I realized I know what IEDs do to people, and I just lost both of my legs, both of my arms. Like I was just torso flipping through the air. And now I'm laying on the ground, and I can hear them all saying like, who's hit, who's down? And they're like, oh, the Brenner's down, the canine's down, blah, blah, blah. And they're saying, hey, do this. So I can hear them like doing stuff like, hey, mark this, grab this, tourniquet. It just sounded like chaos. And then I felt them like ripping my boots off, and then just started ripping all my clothes off. And I'm like, well, if they're ripping my boots off, then I have legs. All this stuff started to fill my head. And in between just praying, like waiting to die, praying to God, he's the first phone call I'm going to make, when I'm laying on the ground. And I just was ready to go. I was so ready to go. And then I started to feel my legs going and my arms moving. And then I'm just like, oh, I'm actually might make it out of this alive. This is not as bad as I thought. And then the medic's working on me, and he's like, hey, calm down, because he's thinking me praying is like making me all upset. And he's like, hey, don't worry, bro. He's like, you're going to be fine. And I'm just like, what? And he's like, yeah, no, you're totally going to be fine. I'm like, they say that to everybody who's going to die in a movie, dude. Like, are you kidding me right now?
Right. Morphine.
Yeah, you get it. Oh, you're going to be fine, man. I'll take care of your wife, I promise.
Right.
And he's like, you'll send me a postcard in 3 weeks. And I'm like, nah, I'm definitely dying. Like, this is great. And then they all knew. And then I heard the sergeant major. He's like, oh, bro, I didn't even see it. He's like, you got dinged up pretty good. And I'm just like, all right, well, he thinks I'm all right. Like, he didn't care. He was just like, he had the, he's right back into it. He's like, patch him up. Let's keep going. Like, that's what I felt like. He's just like, yeah,
where's my knife?
Get this kid a Band-Aid, a straw. So I'm like, all right, maybe I'm not that bad. And then I'm laying there, and I'm just freezing because they ripped all my clothes off, and the ground beneath me just started getting
you
hot.
started getting a shock at that point.
A lot of different things, I guess. Yeah, it was like, I just was freezing, and I just felt like completely naked, which they took everything off. And the ground beneath me just started getting hot with blood. Like I just felt like a warm blanket underneath me, and it was all wet. And I remember hearing them calling the 9 line, like, hey, we got 1 wounded and 1 killed. And my thought process was messed up, and I just thought like, okay, well, I'm wounded, but there's 1 killed. I'm like, it had to have been that captain or something. He stepped in there and tripped something. It had to have been. And I was like, somebody else died. But I started to hear everybody's voice. Everybody I was with was talking. And the one thing they did not say was, go help Grief. Grief come. Or, hey, someone go patch Grief up. Like, they never mentioned his name, and I knew right away that he was killed. And on the ground, I realized that I just lost my best bud. And because of all the things going on and all the trauma and everything, I didn't really, you don't care, you don't feel it. There was a lot of other stuff going on. And it wasn't until weeks later where it hit me like a wall. Like I was run over by a truck and just flooded with emotions. And that was the first time I really realized that he was missing, gone for good. So Yeah, I would mangled me up pretty darn good, and he was right next to me by my side till the very last second, and unfortunately he was killed. I tried to ask my staff sergeant about it in the future, and no one talks about it. I think he was just in really bad shape. But they treat those dogs like any other soldier or Marine. They flew me out of there. Obviously, that was important. And then they made sure they flew another helicopter back just to pick Reef up, and they did a whole thing for him. So it was pretty amazing how they took care of him.
Wow. Yeah. No, I've heard a lot of stories about guys with canine handlers that end up, their dog ends up either in bad shape or like you're talking about in the same story, very important. I mean, there's statues out there. These guys, they serve a major purpose in combat.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like they're treated like anybody else, and they're supposed to, like, we tell other guys, like, they're supposed to know what to do when we get hurt. Like shit's very rare, but if I got hurt and Griefs were running around like crazy, someone's got to be like, go, Grief, teach him commands or grab his leash. Yeah, be friendly with them. But yeah, so they definitely treat these dogs like gold. We hear rumors all the time, like, oh, it's crazy they left all those dogs in Afghanistan to die, and that was a completely different situation. They're not our dogs. Like, we treat these dogs like gold. So
how long was it before you got sent back to Germany?
I immediately flew out of there. It was funny. It was such a hot area. The helo came in. I hear boom, 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 and I'm like, oh, this is nice. And then it takes off. I'm like, where the heck did that thing just go? And I guess because it was like a hot area, they had to like pretend they were coming in, like, oh, got him, wait for the RPGs to go off, and then they came. So I was like, get me out of here. So they flew me to the Bagram. It was the first. It was like the first real hospital type thing. It was the most quietest place ever. They walked in, and I can tell it was sterile. Like, it just felt like my eyes were shut at this point, but I could just tell that it was like a hospital setting. Very quiet, beepy sounds. The doctors whispering to each other. And that's when they told me they couldn't find my pinky or something, and I'm like, I don't know. So it was like where they started to evaluate me, and I was kind of awake. That's when I got to see my staff sergeant, my lieutenant, and they were like, hey, do you want to call your wife? And I'm like, I don't think I should call her. Like, I don't, it's kind of like you're out drinking with the buddies, and they're like, hey, you should call your wife. I'm like, no.
We're still in Vegas.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that at all. I'm turning it off. So I didn't know what to say. I'm like, the last thing I told her was, I promise I'll make it home, and I love you, and everything's going to be okay. And now I'm thinking, this is not okay. So I think I made a mistake. I don't really know. You can't change the past. I think everything happens for a reason. But I said, you call them. And that was the first time she got a phone call from somebody else that wasn't me. So that was what really set her off the edge. And I felt that's what I wish. If I called her and picked up, it never would have been as much of a shock. But hearing somebody else on the phone telling you, hey, there might have been an accident, I could be fine, just broken ankle. You hear that, and you're immediately, her life flashed before her eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, having been on the other side and been the guy that had to go knock on somebody's door in dress uniform, you don't want to get that call. You don't want to see that vehicle. You don't want to see those people walking to your door.
Yeah.
Totally understand that type of situation.
Yeah. So she immediately thought, worst case, I'm dead.
Sure.
And it sucks. And then, like, he goes, there's an accident. And he gave me the phone. I talked to her, and I was just like, hey, what's up, baby? And she's like, this isn't funny. It was like, we tried to talk, and it was good. She got to hear my voice. But then they sent me to Germany, and I was there for about a week until I was stable enough to fly, and I got the ticket. And then they sent me back right before Halloween that year, and I was in Bethesda, Maryland. So I was at Walter Reed now, but it was Bethesda Medical Hospital, and I was there for about 33 days.
Wow, 33 is a long time frame. But at that time frame, tell us a little bit about your injuries and why it was that you had to stay so long.
Yeah, so I was in the ICU. They did as much as they could, patched me up, and then finally was able to go to the 5th floor there, which is pretty much where they had the Wounded Warrior Hospital's floor. Like, it was really where all the Wounded Warriors went, and like they had visitors come through, celebrities, and like volunteers would give you stuff, and that was kind of the cool place. And it was a great time. I mean, they were amazing. It was the best hospital in the world. They wound up finding out, now at this point I know what my injuries are. So like, I had a lot of damage to my left hand and arm. Like I said, left's a pinky, and then my right hand was just mangled up. My right arm was blown like in half, so it was almost falling apart. Then they had to do this extensive surgery, and before that they just chopped your arm off. That's why we had so many amputees back in the day, because they don't have all this amazing technology and surgeries. But they basically take, like, we call it the Humpty Dumpty surgery, but they took a part of my left arm and they put it on the right arm. So they basically had to transplant muscles, veins, arteries, like everything. Yeah. And the guy came up, it was like 20 people around my bed, all white coats. It was a huge team, huge effort. So it's going to be like a 12 to 14 hour surgery. You have a 50-50 chance of losing your arm after this, but because it may not take this little thing might die and your arm might come off. And I'm like, well, do it. Let's get it going. And they sent me back down to the ICU after that surgery. So I was back and forth, but that was the roughest one because it kind of set me back recovery wise. And I just had typical like hearing loss. I had some scarring, what to my face a little bit. And then just parts of my legs were burned and a little chunked off. So it wasn't too bad. Like I had a lot of little injuries to me. Like I had a lot of little things. And I think that's what prolonged my stay. We had some guys who had no legs. They were coming in and interestingly enough, I had nurses pull my sheets off and they're like, wow, you don't have any legs. Like you have legs. This is great. It was just not common. And these amputees were in there 2 to 3 weeks and they pumped them out to the bigger rehab centers. And now they're getting fitted for prosthetics, which now they have the chips and everything. They're like learning how they walk, so it's crazy. So
yeah, you met, now while you were in there, one of the guys that you had for a short time frame as a roommate was a former Marine Special Operations guy, so MARSOC. Did you ever find out what happened to him? Follow up and everything?
Yeah, I kind of kept in contact with him a little bit, as much as you can with special guys.
Sure.
But yeah, like I said, he had no legs. He above the knee, amputee both sides.
He wanted to get back in the fight.
Yeah, he literally was like, hey, I can't wait to get back out there, get out of here or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, I would love to go outside too. And he's like, no, I'm talking about going to Afghanistan. I mean, these guys are just built differently. Yeah. He was a Marine's Marine. His whole family's Marine. I think he was married to an Apache like helicopter pilot. So he was a different dude. But I met him back up in like 6 months later in Balboa in California, and he's on his little studs, like walking around, and we gave each other a bro hug. And then I find out like 3 to 4 months later, he's over there with fake legs in Afghanistan. He went back with his team and deployed.
Man, a lot of
it's amazing.
Some of those, it was around that time frame that you saw the military accepting that and bringing it back, especially special operations. I mean, there's guys that were SF in the Army, special forces, Green Berets that did that and such, and a lot of them stayed on jump status, crazy enough, and yeah, a lot of them ended up doing that. So that's what I was wondering. Did you find out whether that guy did end up doing what he wanted to do, which is stay on active duty, if nothing else?
Did. Yeah, I'm pretty sure for
he deployed, wow.
I know, that's what I said. I mean, but most of the time people are getting out, med-sept or whatever, and he wanted to get back with his team. And I knew what he was talking about. I mean, I had no itch to get back to Afghanistan. I can be honest about that. But yeah, I don't think he was kicking doors down, but he definitely was a fireman.
He was in the fight.
He went back over there, and then he got out shortly after that. But I had that same itch. It was like they told me at the hospital, they're like, "Hey, you can stay here and do like Wounded Warrior stuff, or you can go do whatever. They don't just like kick you out. They take care of you." And I was like, "No, I want to go back to my unit. Like I want to get back to where I was in California. I want to work canine again. I couldn't handle a dog anymore, obviously, but I wanted to basically share my knowledge with the guys." I had amazing trainers, but then I wanted to be that guy who basically said, hey, just don't do this, don't be me, like whatever it might have been, whether it was realizing what this looked like over there, or, there's this one training I wanted to put together where like one of the worst searches I ever did was having to do a secondary blast search. So a blast went off and it blew up a vehicle and unfortunately killed the driver, and it sent just body parts everywhere. And that was the hardest search I ever had to do in my life, because I'm like, Grief, why do you care so much about every little inch of this place? And it's because like 100-pound bomb just went off, a vehicle's all over. And that something like that was something that like really struck with me. And I'm like, we have to emulate this back home as much as you can. So I was throwing like hamburger meat on the ground. I dug a big hole. I made their heart rate go up, and it just putting them in an element that I was never really in. And that's what we do as handlers. We go overseas, we come back, you pass that knowledge on, and you make sure every other handler does the same thing, and that's what keeps the legacy going.
How long did you end up doing that?
I was there for only about a year, because we got back. I got home in 2011 because I was in the hospital.
Right.
I was in Jersey doing rehab for a while. Again, they were going to send me to Virginia to a rehab center, but I'm like, I'm going home. I'm like, what do you have to do to get home? And they're like, for one, get out of your stupid motor chair. They gave me the power chair that I was just like, and they're like, for one, you look like a little baby. Get out of that chair. You want to stay in and go to a rehab center. But I'm like, all right, I'm walking out of here. So we worked real hard, and I worked on walking. I went home and I did like outpatient therapy. So I would just do like four days a week to do occupational therapy. The ladies bending my hands and learning to walk again. And so once I was able to do that, we flew back to California, and I was there from March, and then for the following year and a half, was with my guys. They deployed again on their next rotation in December after that time. So after several months of training with them, they left, and then that's when I went to the Wounded Warrior Battalion to do like that transitional part, like the out processing, kind of keep up with appointments, do therapy, and all those different things. So
when you came back in 2011, I think is when you were describing, or 2010, I guess it was, when you went back home, you got kind of a hero's welcome. How surreal was that? I mean, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was I would say little, but it was a big like hometown thing. My dad put together. His buddy was a captain in the state police at the time, and he set up the whole thing. I mean, they had a convoy of vehicles. We were in a black Tahoe, and and I caught myself because as I'm going down the road and seeing all these little kids with waving flags and stuff, and I was flooded with so many different emotions. I didn't really know how to handle it, and I think I yelled out the window to one kid like, "Stay in school," like, "Don't do this." I was just like geeking out, being immature, and then like it started to hit me. You know what I mean? Like it was freezing that day, and these like little young kids are holding these flags up, and started to get really emotional. I get out, and there's hundreds of people in this parking lot at this firehouse, and they have a big flag drape that we went under, and they had flyover with a helicopter. And when I started hearing that coming from a distance, like when I started to hear the bump of the blades again, like it was the first time in that recent memory that I was like put back there. I've never like suffered from flashbacks or anything, but it wasn't even more of a flashback. It was the memory of being there on the ground, like missing my buddy Grief. And it was like, this is where I'm at now. And I was just, again, flooded with these emotions. And as a helicopter flew over, I just thought of everybody that's still back out there. And I was in this position where it was like every one of these people related to that in some sense. Like they might have had a brother or sister or son or daughter who was over in Afghanistan at that moment, and they don't know if they're going to come back home. And like I realized that like I am this visual person. Like I think I'm still figuring it out to this day, but God saved me for a reason. Like I could have been a second away from being one of my buddies who didn't make it home. And I have a voice. I was able to remember the entire incident. I was able to remember every little detail and be able to tell their story through me, and be able to be that visual that like, hey, because of your son who's over there fighting right now, I'm able to come home and appreciate it. And that's something that I'm still struggling with, but I realize that like, it's just about telling the story, because we always say like, everyone dies once and then they die a second time when they stop saying your name. So it's just all about being able to tell that story and to share that legacy with everybody. And I think that's truly what being American patriotism is about. That's why we love each other so much. That's why when I saw you gave me a hug. I didn't shake your hand like a little girl, and what I mean, like we're just bro hugging it, and it's like this camaraderie. And that's what I think the spirit of America really is. So,
of the original 30 guys that you ended up deploying with and everything, how many of those, other than I think there was 2 that you had mentioned before, did the rest of them make it?
They did, yeah. So we only lost one. We lost Max. He was one of our handlers, our buddy. We lost another Marine in our company. He was a driver. He was a Derek Hernandez, and young kid from, I think, Edinburgh, Texas, and he just was an awesome dude. And he was in a vehicle that just rolled over. The road gave out. That's right. It flipped over into a water canal, and it flooded, and it was a horrible scene. And he's just out there doing his job. Like it's just anybody. I mean, whether you're stepping on a bomb or, like that story, that guy in Iraq who got hit by something. Like it doesn't matter what it is. Like you're just doing your job. And unfortunately, he lost his life that day. And it was just, an eye-opening experience, like, and that happened, we were there about a week. We had the captain come to our group, and I thought he was going to say hi, like, welcome to Afghanistan. And he did, but this was the speech he gave us. And there was just these stages, these layers of like, this is no joke. This is a real thing.
So of the guys that are there, I think one of the things that we lose when we get off of active duty is that sense of service, and then that connection and stuff with the guys that we ended up serving with. Have you been able to stay in contact with those guys? It's part of the healing process, obviously, but I think it's healing for all of those involved and stuff to stay in contact. We always get these things about, look out for your buddy, give your buddy a call and that type of thing. But have you guys been able to really live up to that and do that?
We have, yeah. And it's something we didn't do initially, and I don't really know why it started. We're doing a yearly We're very fortunate. Yearly reunions. Yeah, we started doing these canine reunions. They're becoming huge. It started with like a small group of us getting together for a group, and we met up, and it was just unbelievable feeling. And we're like, we have to make this bigger. We're actually having a huge one in October. We're doing it down in San Antonio, so it's another big thing. It's central, so everyone will be there. Yeah, then it's huge because it's so therapeutic for these guys to come in. It's some of them are afraid to get together again, and I've been in their shoes. I've been much recently too, but you feel like you may not have amounted to enough. You don't have that awesome job. You may not still be in, or you're not kicking indoors anymore. So like you struggle a little bit, but whenever you're sitting together at that table and you're telling those stories, or even just being in presence, sometimes we'll be just sitting next to each other. And it just doesn't matter because like it was just like it was back then. And it's very, very good for them to come out and do it. So I encourage everybody, all units. I don't know if most other units do it. They try to, but like reunions, you got to get to do it. And even if it's the smallest thing, like calling or texting your buddy, if you still have someone's number in your phone, just text them like now. Just say, "What's up, dude?" And don't care about what their job is you have or he has or what's going on, or if it's a good time or bad time in your life, who cares? Just say something, because you never know what he's going through, and vice versa.
Yeah, I think what most guys end up finding is that as you get older, you start thinking those things, but when you're younger, you just feel like, oh, it was just a chapter, let me move on. But it's still there so deeply that by not connecting with that, it can be a problem. So yeah. Great words of advice there. You're wearing a shirt and a hat, so I don't want to miss talking about that. Tell me a little bit about the shirt and hat.
No, so this here, no plug intended, this is the U.S. War Dogs Association. It was started by a small group of Vietnam handlers back in 2001 or something, and they just wanted to raise money to have a monument. Then it's turned into like, hey, let's send care packages overseas. And then they started raising money to like take care of our dogs, active duty. Then when they got out, so they're actually celebrating 25 years this year. The gentleman I mentioned in the book, our staff sergeant, who was my kennel master, he actually is the president of the organization.
Oh,
now.
Great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. The Alabama dude. And yeah, so he's involved, and it's blowing up. I mean, they take care of everybody. They're doing the RX program. They got money for vet bills. They do even bereavement stuff. So if they have to put the dog down, they'll take care of that, because that's dumb expensive. The last thing you want to do is like swipe your card when you just put your dog down. So they do a lot of amazing things, sending care packages overseas. They take care of the retired dogs. So
nice.
It's a good program. Yeah, and this is a funny, interesting story. And I don't know if anything I say is funny. It's like a weird topic, right? Like, because most of the stuff I talk about is dark. So yeah, I try to tell a joke.
Sure.
Anyway. So anyway, we raised money to get a Gold Star Max's mom, a Gold Star mother, to come and to do like a real reunion. So we wanted to raise money. So we were going to sell these t-shirts. So me and my wife left a draw. We're just coming up with that designs, and she designed this
your wife did?
Yeah, she did. Yeah. And she designed it for a t-shirt. We wound up pushing it out a little bit. We sold a lot of them. We were able to raise the money. We all had a great weekend. And then it just kind of took off. This is kind of something that went in, and I kind of adopted it as like my unofficial logo for the story, because it really just kind of tells everything what's going on. It's the
Can
soldiers.
People purchase those?
They can't yet. I mean, they could if you just made it. I mean, I'm a horrible salesperson too, by the way. So I did real estate for 7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you what you've done since.
No, don't do well at that. Don't do it anymore.
7 years it took you that long to figure it out.
Yeah. And as you know, I give these things away for free. So do you want my hat?
No.
Yeah. My buddy, so he made it because the people are obsessed with this logo. They're like, oh, I'm going to make you hats. And he made some hats. He made me some shirts. He spelt my name wrong, so I can't even wear the shirts. So like it's just like became our unofficial logo. And then we'd see it. It's the greatest thing, because then other groups will use it to raise money. And
I'm telling you, it's great. Dan and Brandon will probably want to steal it from you after the show.
Yeah, he's over there Googling it. And he's like, and it's popping up everywhere. I'll be scrolling, and then I'll be like, oh, check it out. Some other group just stole their design.
See?
And then, but then you don't care, because it's like they're raising money for people. So it's nice. But yeah, so my wife drew it, and she never lets me let it down too. Because like everyone knows I'm the artist, because I put it on the computer. I played with the Photoshop. So I had to make it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
she has the original sketch. She put it together. It's amazing.
So other than real estate, what did you end up doing?
Yeah, so I got out. So anyway, fast forwarding, 2012 is when my time was up. Everybody's deployed. I did the Wounded Warrior thing, and I'm like, you know what? I'm getting out. I'm going to make more money now sitting at home. And they sold me, the package. They said, hey, live off the VA, have free medical. I could stay at home and get paid to do nothing. Go to school, use the VA benefit that I haven't been able to use yet. But then I didn't realize that like when you get out, you can't use your VA BAH money for anything. Like you can't go to school. You can only use that for like gas and beer. so like you can't apply for a house, you need a real job. So I went to a lot of like transitional things. I tried different jobs. I was a service dog trainer in California for a little bit with this lady, but I was still in active duty at the time. And then when I got back, I got a job in Philly doing that for a while. And it was just back and forth. I went to school, did that, and then they were like, hey, do you want to do real estate? And I'm like, not really. But, they sold the big commissions and everything. So I did real estate for a while. I didn't like it so much because it just ate at my soul. I love servicing people, but I wound up doing too much service and not caring so much about the paycheck. And that hurts a real estate agent, because you work all the time and I'm constantly saying, yeah, so I'll help you build your deck and, not get paid for it, so I'm like a bad salesman, like I said. And like same thing with the book.
You're a good guy. That's the problem.
I'll do an event and I have like 40 books and they're like, how much is your book? I'm like, just take it. Like I need you to just have it, like, and honestly, I struggled with that too. And maybe we'll touch more about the whole book part, but yeah, so I did real estate for a while. COVID hit. As you guys may or may not know, the market just went bonkers. Like I was doing houses for $350, now they're $700. So I'm like, this makes zero sense. So now I have to explain to people, like they're like, why is my house so much more? Why didn't I buy this? I'm like, I'm done. Like I get calls on vacation half the time. I'm in the middle of your divorce. So like people are fighting. I'm like, I'm not dealing with this. So I dove headfirst into the book hard because I always played with the idea. It was basically an idea that happened a long time ago in therapy, when they try to say, hey, write down your feelings. I did all the therapy. I had the machine in front of me with the lights. I did the EMDR that made you dizzy and want to throw up. I did, shock therapy. They had my hands in shock. Like, I did everything. And then they were like, write down the feelings. Can you remember the incident? Sometimes that helps. And I remembered every little detail, just like I told you today. And she's like kicked me out and said, go write a book. And that's kind of how that started, was that notes in therapy, some journaling I did overseas, put it all together over several years. And then in 2020-ish, when like COVID hit, after drinking for a year, doing nothing like we all did, then I was like, all right, we have to start getting serious. And then I started to do the book more and I dove headfirst. And then 2023, I released it.
So let's talk about the book then, because the book is Surviving with Grief. So for those who are wanting to purchase this, you can go to our Mentors for Mill Amazon page and you'll find the book of all of our guests who've ever came on the show, along with Alfred. And you can pick up his book there, and it's just an easy location to find it. Or you can just search Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all those types of things, Surviving with Grief, and find it. So this was kind of your therapy. It's a very good book, by the way. Sure, we covered elements of it during our conversation, but there's a lot more that is inside the book, and I encourage people to go out and buy it. It was very well written. Did you have a ghostwriter or people to help you, or is this all you?
I kind of ghosted myself sometimes, Randy. I either blacked out or just turned it off for a while. No, I didn't.
You did really well, by the way.
Thank you very much.
No, seriously.
No, I didn't. So I looked into the publishing route, and I always say, I don't want to say things that I'm going to get in trouble for.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
I looked into it, but when you read stories or things, we all know that either Hollywood or publishers or whoever, big man always messes something up, like, because they want to sell. That's all that's important. And I didn't want anything to be tainted, like whether, and I did put the disclosure in, like, this is all true based off of my memory and my experiences and like how I felt in the moment, all that stuff.
Sure.
And I didn't want any of that changed. So I didn't want me to, because I've been interviewed before. They'll do a newspaper article. They'll get my rank wrong. They'll say that grief jumped in front of the bomb and saved my life and stuff. I'm like, this is not true. Like, so I wanted it to be 100% genuine. I wanted it to come from a place of like real, where people knew that this was a real human, no interest in the military, went through this, experienced these things, and then even related to their own daily lives. So that's why I did it myself. And you should have saw the first draft. It was obviously 60 pages longer. And the first time me and my wife sat through it, we're just like, I wrote that? Like, that sounds horrible. It just was cringy. And
yeah, we're our own world's worst critic.
Yeah.
However, there were probably 60 pages of good stuff that somebody else would have looked at and went,
maybe, yeah,
that needs to stay in the book.
It was just like tangent things, like
Okay.
if we're talking here and you get on tangent, it's like, was it a part of the story? Was it necessary? You know what I mean? Like, I could just talk for 5 minutes and be like, you didn't really need to talk about that, but I listened anyway, so something like that.
Yeah.
But so I did everything front to back. I designed it, wrote it. I had a little help from Grammarly, no AI stuff, because that wasn't around back then, but it was like Grammarly, to say like, oh, change this word. And yeah, that was it.
Sentence structure.
Yeah, exactly. Periods. Yeah. And then I'll still get comments like someone wrote a 5-star review, like, this is a great book, but the punctuation sucked. I'm like, whatever. Or like they like editing was bad or something. And
yeah, don't listen to that. Go get the book. And I think one of the cool things that I appreciated about this wasn't just the the text and everything, but of course, we like good pictures.
Oh yeah.
So some of the pictures that you actually took that you were talking about earlier are in the book, and so you can actually see the door and stuff like that. And then in the back of it, you did a really nice job, providing information and sharing the stories about the individuals that you lost while there, and that was really nice as well. And there's your wife's perspective that's in here. Again, I think it was very well done, and I appreciate that. The thing that I do want to ask you is, like, do you find, and maybe this is too deep, but do you find that doing these types of things and by writing this book, it truly was cathartic, or still is, or does it bring back those memories in a way in which it never maybe allows you to escape it?
Oh, I like that. Yeah. No, I don't think so. I think it's a good point, because like you can get hung up on it. Like there's a point where you can get hung up on the past, or like, there was points where I'll give a talk and I'll get emotional sometimes. I'll choke up, but that's because like I'm really into it.
Sure.
Very getting. I'll feel it, and it'll get me. But it definitely is a thing where like everyone asks, well, is this very therapeutic or cathartic? And it was very difficult to do, because like I had to put it down. I wanted to share the stories of those who couldn't come back. I wanted to say how it affected me, because some people went over there. Like I had a roommate who was on suicide watch because he was next to somebody who died. Like his injuries weren't that severe, but he had a lot longer of a recovery and a longer road because he was dealing with survivor's guilt, and he was dealing with all these other mental things. And we don't talk about that as much. It's very hard to talk about it. And I wanted to give people an outlet. Like I'll write this, tell a story, give a speech, then they'll come up and tell me about their dog that just died 3 months ago. Or a guy from Vietnam will be like, oh, I'm going to tell you a story or two. It really just allows them to open up, I think, because of the vulnerability. For me, I struggle with this whole thing. And this is why it's more about getting the story out than it is about like the fact that it's a book and you sell and everything, even talking about it, even sometimes sitting here with you. It's like, I don't want to say like, oh, I'm capitalizing on my dog's death. You know what I mean? There's these feelings, these weird feelings of like, it's a great story, but it's also a very bad story, if that makes sense. So I get put in this weird position of like, what's the real purpose of my life? Like, what's the mission? And initially it was about, pushing it and all that, but now it's more about just telling the story of those who can't talk anymore. We have to be able to continue to talk. I want people to be able to come to me and say, even if it's like, oh, I just lost Lucy last month and it makes me upset, but everything you said makes me feel so good. That's the rewarding part. That's what's really important. Or like I said, giving them away for free at the airport to the veteran who's wearing a hat, and the guy starts getting emotional because I wrote "Welcome home, thanks Tony" or something. That's why I'm doing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's obvious you were just talking about capitalizing on it. You haven't been capitalizing a whole lot because you've been giving the books away so much. So, I do hope that you capitalize on the book and people go out and buy it, because I think one of the things I did get from this is that it was true raw emotion, and you were very vulnerable inside the book in so many different ways. And I think, like I said, your wife's perspective and some of the things that were in there helps the reader truly understand that this affects not just the individual soldier, sailor, airman, Marine. It also ends up affecting sometimes the spouses, their family members, and including their kids. It becomes more is when somebody gets injured, somebody has a very traumatic experience or something of that effect is what I'm
my God,
about.
absolutely. And I touch on it a little bit, and because it's not my place to say, but these women, men, whoever, the spouses, dependents, they have it way worse than us. Like, we have it bad in certain areas, but they struggle so much because we might be disconnected or staring off at a wall or getting angry with her or him, and they don't really know why. I mean, they may be okay, like I struggle with it all the time. And it's like, you don't want to say, oh, it's because I was hurt, or because I saw combat, or because I did this. You don't want to say that, but it could be true. So there's like this fine line of communicating, healthy communication, but not giving each other enough credit. What I've learned is, and I guess this is my little tidbit for it, is I've learned that I lied to myself too many times, and that's what got me in trouble. Like, not just to other people. We all like lie to other people, like, oh yeah, life's great, bro. Or like, oh, I got a great job, or whatever it may be. We lie easily to other people, but the hardest thing we do is lie to ourselves, because then you keep everything closed off and inside of you. And I did that for so long, and it's really ate at me to the point where, like, because it was so invisible and so secretive that nobody knew it was a problem. It was like a virus just growing and growing. Next thing you know, 20 years later, like, oh, you have cancer. You had it forever, and you never told anybody about it to get it checked out. And that's why it's important just to be honest with yourself. But like, hey, if I think I have a problem, just say it to somebody. It doesn't have to be your wife. It doesn't have to be your mom or dad. It has to start with one person. Because if it starts up, it's calling your buddy, be like, hey, bro, I'm not doing too good. that'll open it up to something else. Then you're going to be able to talk to your wife. Then you're going to be able to seek help. And that's how it starts. It just rolls. No one goes to boot camp being able to run a 300 PFT or shoot expert on the range day one. You know, even the guys who used to shoot back home, well, I shoot all the time. Like, yeah, no, you shot, I shoot a rabbit with a $2 pistol. Yeah, but then they would fail on the range because they didn't know the structure. They didn't know how to do it. Everybody has to start at day one. And then over time, it becomes something different. Like, it'll just become, like, we all became Marines at the end of boot camp. So it has to start with one step, that one step to get there.
I think it's beautiful. And I think that what you're describing there too is this has been very therapeutic for you in a lot of different ways by you being able to share what you just shared. And by, you going around and getting the opportunity to share this story. I would say it's your story, but like you said, I think you did it, studied it very well. It's your perspective of the story of events or things that happened that maybe other people experienced in very similar or different ways. And you're being able to talk about it and do it in a way in which I think people who've never served can relate. I mean, a lot of people end up having pets or whatever, so they end up understanding that side of it, or they had loved ones that they lost in combat or, whatever. And so there is a connection that's happening here. And I think you're stating that so well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming all this way, man, to get on the show. When I say all this way, you came all the way from Jersey. So a lot of times we don't talk about where all this way is, but you came all the way there to sit in this room behind this microphone and camera and stuff to share this
planes,
journey.
Trains, and automobiles for sure. I was sitting next to John Candy the whole time.
No way.
Yeah. Well, no, obviously he died. I'm not alive. No, they make you get on a train at your airport. Yeah, you get off. So not only do you have to walk a mile into a concourse, it was just like you get off at E24 and then it just like kept going. And then I get to the end, I'm like, thank God. And then the sign says, get on a train. Yeah. And I was with this lady. She was this awesome lady from Philly, but she wouldn't stop talking. She's like, I don't know where to go, but this is fun. And then she's like, do you know where to go? I'm like, no. But you just follow the group. Then we get on a train, and then they make you go down the train, but they don't tell you it takes off too fast, and everybody falls back. It's crazy. You flew there, right? It's horrible.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Then you get on another train to go get your rental car, but it's a Sky Train.
See, that one's even jerkier and stuff.
Yeah, it is. It feels like it's going to fall off. And meanwhile, I'm like, I have plenty of time. Let me just take all these trains, and then I'll get in my car and then drive. Then there was some traffic, so I'm like, this is great. It was fun. It was a very great experience. So I apprate.
Don't talk too negative about Atlanta. No one.
Oh, I did not bash it as much as your other guests. Like, I was careful. Everyone was like, oh, screw the. I have 85 up by me too. I know how bad a highway is. Yeah, and that's what I learned about America. We all travel, and everyone talks crap. I did one podcast. I mentioned a state. I said how horrible it was, and then you get blown up. I mean, people are like, you don't know anything about my state. And it's just like, you got to be careful what you say, but no, it was an experience.
Yeah, the ATL is not much different than I think Jersey or Philly.
I guess. Yeah. I don't want to experience. I don't know. I heard. Yeah. I just. Yeah. We don't have to talk about it. I'm gonna stay in my room tonight and not leave.
Yeah, understand. Alfred, appreciate you, man. I really do appreciate what you're all about, what you're doing and everything. And I hope more people get a chance to go out, read the book, and learn more about your story. And as a matter of fact, maybe even have you come on the speaking circuit and come and help them in certain situations, whether it's a business that's wanting to learn a little bit more about grief or, dealing with adversity, resilience, whatever the case may be. I think you're really, personifying that with grit, endurance, resilience, and all those types of things. And I appreciate you coming here and talking about it. Thank you very
much. I appreciate you saying that because I do a lot of talks for free too. I do a lot for free.
That's not good, man. We're going to have to talk about free off here.
I did not do well. That's what credit cards are for, right?
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming on.